IVM.
Some time ago, 5 successful restaurateurs came together to form the Colaba Cartel. The founders of the table, Gauri Dayal and J. Yusuf, partnered with the founders of Woodside Inn, Abhishek Honawar, Pankil Shah and Sumit Gambhir to open a new restaurant in Colaba. If you've ever dreamed of opening a restaurant or love eating out, you want to listen in. The Colaba Cartel. This exclusive 10-part series is hosted by Gauri Dayal and Amit Doshi.
Welcome to episode 7 of the Colaba Cartel. Along with my co-host Gauri, we're joined by Abhishek. Gauri, what are we going to talk to Abhishek about today?
So today we're going to talk a bit more about what goes into building a team that can actually execute the vision of the restaurant.
Awesome. That's going to be a lot of fun to hear. So guys, the service at both of your places is like fantastic, right? And that is something that clearly doesn't happen by accident, right? I mean, there has to be a lot of thought that goes into that. And you need a team who you can work with and who can execute on your vision of the restaurant. That is something that I would think, right? So broadly speaking, what is your philosophy of how you build a team, right? I mean, like, you've been doing this long enough that you must have some rules of thumb that you use in terms of what you look at in, when you're looking for people. What are those? What do you look for? Gauri, would you like to answer?
So I think one of the things I've learned is that you can never tell, necessarily whether this person's right for the team immediately when you meet them. But of course, there are going to be a few things that, that sort of stand out. And, for me, the most important thing is attitude. Mm-hmm. You want people who feel as pumped about, what you're building as you do. And that's going to come across in, you may not have the technical background. You may not be, a hospitality student. You may not be actually a chef who's gone to culinary school. You may not be someone who's got an MBA in marketing to do a marketing job. Yes, for accounts, you should be able to tell the difference between debits and credits. But, like for me, I've learned over the last sort of 8 years that someone who's got this yearning to learn wants to be in this space, right, and has the right attitude about what it takes to sort of catch up with everybody else. Is, for me, the right fit. That's
interesting. So I think what, in a nutshell, what you're trying to say is that skills can be taught, but attitude
to a large
cannot.
Extent, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And, we're seeing more and more people not from the sort of traditional hospitality background getting into this space now.
Right.
So it's definitely attitude over skill. And that's, to some extent you can gauge that when you meet somebody, but obviously it's also a time will tell kind of thing. Right.
How about you, Abhishek? What's your thought on this?
I think I second everything Gauri says. And I feel like taking us back to the time when we started the company was 2000, late 2006, early 2007. Hospitality was a career that people were choosing when it seemed like people were choosing when they didn't have too many options left. Mm-hmm. Or at least that was some of the perception that I was given about the choice I was making. However, immediate family and friends were all encouraging and, we went into this. So keeping that in mind, the kind of talent that you saw at that time, mm-hmm. You required to give them a surrounding that was a little more safe, secure, trusting, a place where they could feel at home, right. and because of which they were able to give an output that you desired, which was just humble, simple, good mm-hmm. hospitality,
right.
just khatardari basically.
Right.
And I think fast forward to today, I feel like, we over the years have been able to, adapt and change our philosophy towards coming towards where we are now, where attitude over the years has become more and more important.
Right.
I think that kind of came into the groove when MasterChef happened, when people started seeing, hospitality as a career on television.
Right.
When Sanjeev Kapoor probably came on to like more mainstream television than just where he was. So on and so forth. So that kind of got more people encouraged. And when those people came in, they came with their learning and their background and their, the way they were. And I feel like that's where the attitude kicked in,
right.
And, but I feel like we, for some reason, have still never left on that, safety, security, a cocoon where you can really explode and you can really deliver your best in our philosophy. And also what we're trying to keep is transparency, trust, and for that matter, a canvas for expressing your creativity.
Right. So actually you brought up trust, which I think is kind of an interesting thing in this space, right? I mean, how do you deal with trust issues, right? Because I mean, like restaurants are a high cash business. There's a lot of, it's cash. Also, you have a lot of suppliers, a lot of vendors and stuff like that. And these are typically opportunities where pilferage can occur, right? So I would have to assume that, trust becomes a really critical part of how you look at who you want to bring on board. How do you look at that? How do you kind of solve for that? Or how do you kind of recruit to kind of try and find trustworthy people?
So, basically everything that you do in a restaurant has to do with, you have to follow systems.
Right, of course.
And systems are built to make sure that the team or everybody in the restaurant family is walking a certain path. The tighter your systems, the better your direction is. As far as trust goes, there's always a little bit of room for things to go wrong. And that room should be covered by motivating people to always do the right things.
Right.
And that's something that we constantly do to kind of, positively influence people. And I'll take this back to the previous point, where if you have people in the right surrounding, in the right atmosphere, and in a place where they can express themselves positively, I believe automatically they end up doing the right thing.
Right.
They make the right choices. So it's like there's a little bit of synergy in these two points. And as far as the cash business goes, I think, the things have rapidly changed. It's everything is, bank transfers and online transfers. You are seeing lesser and lesser cash in the business.
Interesting. Okay.
So I think that also, in its way, has been a benefit.
I would say so, yeah. And, because if it's accounted, then it becomes...
Everything is accounted for.
Gauri knows, if it's accounted, then you don't have that much of it.
I'll sort of add to what Abhishek said, that I think a lot of it is also the culture that you create as the business owner. If you're not sort of pulling out from the till every so often and just being like, "Arey, just give me some and I'll, or whatever."
Right.
If you're not encouraging your own team to do that, or you're not depositing cash because, that's your way of sort of saving tax or something. If you yourself account for every penny, your team sees that, they understand whom they're working for, and then they'll think twice before doing something. Having said that, we probably at some point, everyone's had, an issue in the past. And, that is unfortunately like a small price. And I mean, it's a part of this kind of business, and you have to deal with it, whether you have sort of security systems in place. Even, for example, I've seen that, the software that restaurants use to make bills and things.
Right.
Those have got more sophisticated over the years. And any changes that are done which look sort of off key, they get flagged. So, systems are getting more sophisticated. But I mean, I think a bigger point for me is that when we opened the table, it took us about 3 years to take our first long vacation. And that was, we'd go away for short trips, but a month, and it was because it wasn't just about trust in terms of, cash sort of aspects,
but also
running the restaurant, being able to take decisions and, that you trust your team to deal with issues without you.
Right.
And it's a huge liberating factor when it happens.
Right.
But I think trust can happen and I think the more you trust them with the business, the more they don't want to mess with it because it's empowering in a way.
Exactly.
Right?
You're giving them ownership in what they're trying to do.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you brought up culture, right? So I mean, again, somewhat adjacent to trust, right? I'm mostly from my background's been media and tech over the last year. And in that part of the business world, culture is everything, right? I mean, everybody, the way that we look at how you want to kind of create a team or how you want to grow a business, culture becomes everything. How important is that in what you're trying to do, right? I mean, beyond the trust factors, even just getting people on the same page to kind of move ahead and do the rest and get things done the way that you think that they should be done.
So I think culture is probably the most important thing, in the business. And I think setting the tone for the company, as we may say, is important. People should know, what are we doing in the business actually? We are actually managing people's expectations. Whether that is, teams managing the guest expectations or the owners managing the team's expectations or vice versa, whatever, the chefs, the bartenders, or whatever that is. It's like managing expectations the whole time. And I think because we're such a large group of people trying to achieve the same goal, there needs to be a certain mindset that needs to be, all encompassing and looking after everyone's needs and necessities. And I think that is the starting point for culture.
Right.
Now, obviously, going back towards creating the right atmosphere at work, the right measures, making sure everyone is in a good atmosphere. All those things kind of set the foundation for the culture, and then you go into the more exciting parts of things.
Right.
So answering your question, culture is probably the most important thing
when you're looking to have.
Yes.
Okay, that's true. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think one other thing that helps a restaurant establish that culture, because you may have individually a point of view of how you want things to be, how you want your staff to be sort of towards each other, towards guests, all of that. I think a big part of being able to really establish that is having people who, the longer we talk about the staff turnover in restaurants, and I think the longer you have your team members there with you, that's because they actually believe in the same culture and they embody it, and they consistently are able to demonstrate that or live that culture that you're trying to create. And I think that's a really big part of a team, of having, of managing a team, is people management, and making sure that you actually have, people who are with you over, there's nothing. I mean, the number of times I've had guests come and say, I love so-and-so at your restaurant, naming a staff. And they actually build a relationship with the team. And that's, for me, that's the culture, that you actually have a relationship with your colleagues, with your guests. It's not just about coming, showing up to work, doing your task and leaving, but you have sort of, and that can only really happen over a period of time. It's not something you create like overnight and or you dictate on a sort of mandate and say, this is what it will be.
How much does culture evolve, right? I mean, like, again, we spoke a little about, like you were talking about in 2007, you used to recruit a certain type of team member. Now that has kind of moved into a different thing, right? But how does culture evolve over the years in terms of like what you're trying to do? Because if you're trying to keep people on for long periods of time, you have to empower them in different ways, I assume, right? It can't always be like, hey, you can do, there has to be like variety in that, I would assume.
For sure. I mean, there has to be a challenge and there's like growth for people. You have to feel sort of inspired at work every day and motivated to show up to work every day. But I think, at the end of the day, the restaurant stands for something. You stand for certain beliefs, whether it's in the kind of food you serve, whether it's in, the standards of service, whether it's whatever. It's like, the fact that you won't just be paying cash to everybody, whatever. Right. There's a certain value system that you create. And then it's really about people either kind of following suit and coming on board and believing in the same thing or not. I don't think I think it's something that you have from day one, and it sort of just gets stronger and stronger, over the years. It's not, I don't think it changes as such. And you need people who are on the same wavelength and have the same beliefs, basically.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Let me ask you this, right? How do you organize the team that you have, right? I mean, like do you do departments? Do you do groups? Do you do like small teams? What's the organizing principle behind how you look at the team itself?
If you go to culinary school, you predominantly go to, back of the house or front of the house. Now, in the back of the house, there's probably a kitchen. In the kitchen, there's, different styles of culinary. There's the garde manger, which is like, cold kitchen. Then you have the pastry, which is the baking and desserts and so on and so forth. So then there are departments within departments. Okay. And then front of the house, there is people who handle guest relations, people who are sommeliers, people who are bartenders, people who are mixologists, people who are servers. There are different departments again within that department also. So yes, we kind of know, depending on the size and the shape of the restaurant, we know exactly what the requirements are, and accordingly we kind of fill it up.
So what is the biggest team that you would normally have at a restaurant? Is like your front of the restaurant team bigger or your back of the restaurant team bigger? Just numerically from like a head count perspective. I think people will be curious about that.
I think, it ends up being around the same, front of the house and back of the house, because usually if a restaurant's food focused, even 40% of their attention is on the food, then you have to devote at least 30 to 40% of your space back at the production space,
right?
Or may I say 50% of the restaurant space, which is the guest area, is only 50%. The remaining 50% is all back of the house,
right?
Which might include the guest toilets, which might include the team toilets, right? The kitchens, the storage, and all those areas. So once you bifurcate this to service that equal amount of space,
right,
you have equal amount of team members. Yes.
Oh, interesting.
Approximately, depending on the concept. If the concept is a little more food forward, this is the trend.
Okay. All right, that makes sense. All right, one thing I'm kind of curious about is team unity, right? I mean, it's a thing that I've seen in a number of restaurants that when right before service is starting, they'll have some kind of ritual, everybody doing there'll be a hype man, there'll be all kinds of stuff going like that. What kind of things do you guys do around that, Gauri?
So, I mean, it's called a service briefing.
No, we do it in Indian dance.
It looks very energetic to me whenever I'm at some place at 6:30 or something like that, and then dinner is about to start at 7:30. It seems like at that time, people are just getting really, really. It feels very much.
Well, you do want to get pumped for the night ahead. It's sort of get people kicked about the evening ahead. Yeah, I mean, there's obviously on a daily basis, there is, a service briefing for the front of house team. Other things you do, we've closed once a year and take the team away somewhere for a staff picnic. I mean, I don't think that that's probably enough, but you can't really close the restaurant more often than that. So, or rather too often. So, that's one thing we do. And it's becoming a bigger and bigger challenge, actually, because firstly, the team's growing, every year. And also, I think one thing I've realized is that as you're bringing in people from different walks of life and different sort of background, and is that finding something that is, enjoyable on a common ground is becoming a big challenge for us.
I think alcohol is the solution to that question.
I know. But
in our own little way, I feel like hospitality is a team sport, and I feel like you need to be motivated towards what you're going to be doing for that period of time. Yes, the service briefing, like Gauri said, to add to what she's saying, you get your goals and, you get what you reached yesterday, what you're supposed to reach today, what are the tools to reach those goals today. Are there enough people coming into the restaurant this evening to kind of meet those goals today? What are the trends? What are the markers? What are the special events, guests, this, that? So you know the whole shebang basically before service. But then also there is a little bit of excitement that you need to create. It's because hospitality again is a team sport, but it's an expression.
Yeah.
Every plate is an expression, every service move is an expression. And I feel like that motivation, that flair, that hospitality and service flair or the kitchen flair should come into everybody. And there are maybe methods which team leaders can use to kind of bring that up. Because once you bring that flair and that attitude, as Gauri mentioned before, to the floor, I think, the service becomes special.
Right.
And once the service becomes special, people are hooked.
Right.
And people are hooked, they keep coming back. So.
Cool. All right, let's take a quick break and let's come back and then talk about how you go about building a team for a project like Miss T.
Did you know that Parsis in Mumbai, instead of being left at the Tower of Silence after they die, are now cremated? And why? Because a cow fell sick in the early 1990s. Did you know that the smog in Delhi is caused by something that farmers in Punjab do and that there's no way to stop them? Did you know that there wasn't one gas tragedy in Bhopal, but 3? One of them was seen, but 2 were unseen. Did you know that many well-intentioned government policies hurt the people they're supposed to help? Why was demonetization a bad idea? How should GST have been implemented? Why are all our politicians so corrupt when not all of them are bad people? I'm Amit Verma, and in my weekly podcast, The Seen and the Unseen, I take a shot at answering all these questions and many more. I aim to go beyond the scene and show you the unseen effects of public policy and private action. I speak to experts on economics, political philosophy, cognitive neuroscience, and constitutional law so that the insights can blow not only my mind, but also yours. The Seen and the Unseen releases every Monday. So do check out the archives and follow the show at seenunseen.in. You can also subscribe to the seen and the unseen on whatever podcast app you happen to prefer.
Welcome back. So, you know, what I want to ask is, I guess a question that I'm really interested in is, so Misty is a big project, right? And I mean, like, you're 5 of you working on it. When you want to start recruiting a team for this kind of thing, right? I mean, like, I know that with the 5 years, it really was Avengers Assemble, right? And I mean, like, you just got together and just did it, right? But I mean, like, is that what happens with the, but when you're looking to recruit the wider team, right? How much of that is, okay, I worked with this person in the past. I think he would be a good fit. I worked with this person in the past. I think this person would be a good fit. I've seen what this guy is doing. You know, how much is network driven? How much is recruitment driven? I mean, like, how do you strike a balance between those things?
So obviously, both the companies have existed for a very long time. And because of their existence, they have a good, underbelly of people, basically, that want to be a part of the growth program. Misty is a growth program for both the companies. So there has been a lot of internal growth, which we hugely promote. I think across 2 companies, we hugely promote. We want people to grow. We want people to be, taking the next steps. We want them to grow with us, and I think that's something that we promote. So yes, a decent to good amount of people come from the crux of the restaurants. Then today we are in a great place of seeing career changes. We have this huge opportunity where the industry is suddenly taken, is in the limelight, and people are looking to kind of move into the industry. People are very passionate about food, and I feel like food and beverage is becoming an important place in everyone's lives. And I feel like we are seeing a lot of people come in, and wanting to be a part of a great story, being inspired by people who have been in the business for long enough and have a good track record and want to build something special.
Right.
So because of which we're seeing a good amount of people coming in from different walks of life. And we have, in fact, for this project, have taken, the chance of taking a lot of people from different walks of life. And we are really enjoying, this team effort so far.
That's great. That's great. Gauri, what about you? What are your thoughts?
No, I mean, basically, I agree with what Abhishek is saying. And I think that you tap into every sort of resource available to you, whether it's your existing team members, people who may have worked with you in the past and not sort of, for whatever reason, moved on, but then want to come back and, be a part of your next sort of story and the next chapter. And, again, sort of word of mouth. And yeah, I mean, you do use sort of some of the traditional channels of recruitment agents and things, but I think something I've, again, seen works most effectively is people who come through a known person, because it's someone who knows the culture, who knows, the culture most importantly. And I don't think anyone can kind of speak about your establishment as well as your own team.
Right.
So, this is then someone who's coming in knowing probably as much as they can know before working in a place themselves. And I think that really is the biggest form of recruitment for us.
So, I mean, both of you mentioned how you're trying to get people from your existing teams and trying to give them opportunities for growth. Does that harm your existing businesses? I mean, like, I use the word cannibalize, but I don't think that that's appropriate at this point because of the way that you think of this as something that's a positive thing. But does that hurt the existing businesses if you're taking people out from Woodside or you're taking people out from Table and moving them into the new restaurant? How do you kind of...
You'll never really take someone out and leave a vacuum.
Okay.
So, if you are doing that, there's obviously because there's someone else who's sort of stepping into their place. So, it really is a matter of it's timing. It's, if you have... And sometimes what you might do is bring people in from your existing team to sort of...
Assist.
to assist and to kind of translate that culture that exists, into the new space where you have, people who aren't as familiar with it. And so you're kind of just bringing them on to help to sort of expedite that, creating that culture, that service standard, that etiquette, all of that. So, and, that's one of the great things about 2 sort of established groups coming together is that was the point, that you want to leverage as much as you can of your existing knowledge, team, all of that. That's the whole, why did sort of these 2 groups get together and not like 2 other groups? And it's like you have a similar philosophy and you want to learn from each other. And, so you definitely want to make the most of your existing teams and knowledge that you've built to date. Right. But you also have to grow. So you have to, you can't just be pulling people out and, like I said, leaving gaps. So you'll have to still grow the team.
Right.
And then it's just a matter of sort of finding the right people, but bringing that existing culture in faster.
I think I just second everything she says.
All right, cool. It was a very comprehensive answer.
Yes.
I mean, okay, so, all right, two-part question. First part is, how big is the Misty team?
So currently, I think we should be around 30 to 32 people.
30 to 32 people. Who would you say are the core members of this team, and how did you get them on board, right? I mean, like, are these people who you went out and sought out, or are these people who you worked with before? Or probably the 4 or 5 major players on this, besides the 5 of you, but besides.
Sure. So, I mean, all of us put together, we're a team, and everyone's important, and everyone plays a very valuable role.
Yeah. Who are the people in the leadership position?
Yes, I think
that way.
And I think we are very blessed and lucky to be able to have found these people within the company.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's a GM, whether it's the chef, whether it's our head bar manager or so on and so forth. That the people in the lead have been people that have come from an organic place.
Right.
So yes, that's been our main find, and we've also gone ahead and found a lot of people from outside, that we've been able to put in the senior lead positions that also have great attitude. Aside from the excellence at the job that they selected for, they have great attitude, they have great leadership skills, they have great empowering tools in place. So yes, all that put together, we've been able to formulate this good team.
Awesome.
We also have we have one of our head bartenders.
Yes, a mixologist
who is here from New York.
Okay.
So again, we've got people who are from our existing teams who kind of know the local ways of working, and we also wanted to bring a little sort of spark to the new place, and give a different experience from what you might find in Bombay. And we actually have head mixologist Jeremy Buck, whom I think you will at some point
you'll hear
meet.
more about.
Yes. I'm looking forward to the.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to consuming alcohol at Misty.
So we have him. And then we also have a few people who are sort of guiding us in a way. They may not be sort of permanent members of the team, sort of chef consultants.
Okay.
So we have Chef Bomra, who is
I've
big favorite of everyone who's ever been to Goa.
Absolutely.
He's integral to what we're doing at Misty,
Right.
and so we've really brought in people from every sort of avenue available to us to just create this incredible experience. And that's the thing, that it may not be someone who's there day in day out, as a sort of member of staff kind of thing, but they have as much, if not more, sort of impact on what's going to happen at the restaurant.
The point that she made is directly related to the point of growth and going forward, because anybody who's working at the restaurant has come with a certain amount of qualification, a certain amount of experience, but what are we doing to take that person, him or her, to the next step?
Right.
So these are the catalysts that we've all 5 of us all put together, been able to bring forward and bring into this restaurant.
I mean, another example is we've got our bar consultants are from Hong Kong.
Okay.
And, they're sort of well known in the bar circles. They haven't done that much in India, but they're pretty well known, around Asia. And so, when I mentioned to some of our bar team that we had Sandeep from Proof & Co. coming to Bombay and working on Misty, and they literally, their jaws dropped, and they were like, whenever, when he is here, can we sort of be there and learn from him? And, when he did come and was working on, creating the cocktail program, one of our guys, it was his day off, and he was like, do you mind if I go? And I was like, by all means. And for them, that's the kind of thing that, you want to be, they may only spend that one day with him,
Right.
and not sort of, and then go and be working at the table. But as an organization, I think it's really important to provide those opportunities to people for their own growth. And, it could be someone who's, doing your digital marketing in your team, and there's a course that's relevant to them, and you might send them for that. But I think that to see that they're investing, that an organization's investing in you with no necessarily, not
these
sort
are
of strings attached.
They're transferable skills.
Yeah.
So
And I think that's really important to that retention.
I agree.
Aspect that we were talking about, which is actually, it can really change the experience of your restaurant when you have people who've been there and I'm not expecting people to be there with us for life, but to have that continuity and that sort of longevity with your team, it can alter the success of your business.
Right. Okay, so just one last kind of question at this point. Did you find any specific challenges for this particular restaurant that you have not faced in other properties that you've developed, right? Have there been any kind of, in terms of the team building efforts and what this, was there something that happened here which is like kind of like, whoa, what, like either good or bad, right? But just completely unexpected.
I think,
basically story time.
Fundamentally, the two groups coming together, it just felt like the right marriage of 5 people. I think Sumit, Pankaj, Jay, Gauri, and me. I feel like it was amazing group that came together, and because of which the project has gone by shockingly fast. Things have moved very rapidly. We've been able to divide and conquer. We've been able to kind of progress at a speed that
honestly blows my mind.
Yeah.
It really blows my
blew
mind.
all of us.
I was just like,
we have not experienced
I
this.
expected, you guys were saying that it would open at a certain point in time, and you're like within a week of that, and that just to me is like insanely great.
But I'll add to what Abhishek was saying. I think it's definitely, to answer your question, it's definitely been easier for us because we're not completely freshers sort of opening our first restaurant, and so people kind of are excited to be part of this project. But one thing that sort of is really funny, so someone, one of the team members we have with us, she's not really from the hospitality background, and she happened to go and meet, and she's been thinking about it, and she happened to go and meet me and Abhishek very independently on the same day. She asked for meetings with us, to get our sort of 2 cents on the industry and, what she could do to kind of get an idea of whether this is for her or not. And we both happened to meet sort of later on, have a meeting together. And we both said, I think I met someone who might be sort of a good fit to this project. And I was just like, what are the chances that, that we've met somebody we're talking about the same person. But that's what I mean, that for me, I think that was really a great validation that this was someone who came to the two of us who are from these two groups, didn't know anything about Misty, didn't know that this project was on the anvil.
Exactly.
And we both felt the same way. This person obviously saw us in a similar sort of space and light in terms of, people to get worthy of getting advice from. And, I think that's for me, a great anecdote of...
I think so. I didn't think of it in this light,
I still remember that day that, you were like, I was just like, that's hilarious that, but, I think one thing that I'm just going to sort of, my last sort of 2 words on this is that, this is I didn't know this when we got into the business, but everyone thinks running a restaurant is about food and beverage. And to me, it's actually about the people, because if you don't have the people either making the great food or serving it, you're nothing.
Right.
And managing your team is number one over and above
everything.
Anything else.
Right.
If they get what you are trying to do with your food, if they get what you're trying to create in your sort of, service experience, if they get it, they'll make it for you. If they don't, you're nothing. So,
she's spot on. She's spot on. I think these are the golden words. Hospitality is every glove fits one. And I think that everyone believes the guest is always right, and all those fundas and philosophies are right. Like obviously, the guest is always right, but your team is everything.
Right.
Like your team stands for what the core values of the restaurants are, and if the team exhibits that, and the team kind of expresses that, you're on the right track. You're a winner.
Awesome. That's great. I think that's a great place to end this particular episode. So that was a really, really interesting conversation to have around team building. But Gauri, once you start building out the team and get the restaurant going, how do you get people to know about it?
Well, that's why it's really important that you tune in for the next episode where we have a special guest with us, our design consultant, Dallas Fernandez from the Dallas Company, who's going to be talking a bit more about marketing and branding of a restaurant.
Awesome. Look forward to it. And in the meantime, guys, please also make sure that you're following us on social media. If you want to follow the Misty restaurant, that's Misty Colaba on Instagram or Twitter. Gauri is at G Devi Dayal on Instagram. And also please make sure you're following IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
गिव मी अ वर्ड या कोई भी लाइन, कुछ भी हो सकता है यार. क्या कहा आपने? टोपी. Okay. Mohan Joshi hated wearing topis. He felt suffocated in them. टोपी पहनते ही उसे स्कूल की याद आती थी. Where of course he had no choice but to wear a टोपी. But जिस दिन पास आउट हुआ, उसी दिन उसने अपनी टोपी का bonfire बना दिया. And since then, he'd never worn a cap or a hat. ना कड़कती धूप में, and not even to बचो from the ठंडी. But from Monday 26th February, Mohan Joshi had to wear a topi all the time. Why? Because if he didn't, everyone around him knew exactly वो क्या सोच रहा था. They knew that he was wondering how the girl in the yellow churidar would look बिना कपड़े के. They knew when he was calling the boss a सड़ेला टमाटर. They knew everything. पर ये सब हुआ कैसे? अरे भाई, यही तो स्टोरी है. और ये स्टोरी आप ही ने मुझे दिया by giving me the starting word. यही तो है The Croc's Tales. Words आपके, कहानी आपके लिए. Catch the stories on Monday and Thursday on the IVM website, app, and anywhere you get your podcast from. See you soon.
Long, long ago, not in Bethlehem, but in a place nearby, there was a wonderful birth of a huge show, which I like to call Cyrus Says. A show that encapsulates everything in human history, from the first Homo sapien to the last Homo sapien, who's traversed the entire world and then come back to India. This is a show which tells you everything about everything. If you want to know, avoid Google, come to us. It's called Cyrus Says. Get new episodes every Monday and Thursday on the IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you get your podcasts from. It's simple as A, B, oh God, what comes after that?